Hello and welcome to the New Age Geek channel. If you're new here, we'll be an inclusive space for people of all walks of life through the power of friendship, magic, and tabletop role-playing games. Tonight we have our regular, irregular show, Investigation Check, where we dive into the geeky backstories of your favorite creators. Tonight we have artist, storyteller, producer at the Storyteller Squad, witchy cryptid, and the lo-fi lesbian, Natalie Fuinha. Probably
Hello,
didn't say that right
everyone.
still.
That's okay. No one can get it right the first time.
What's up, Natalie? How you doing tonight?
I'm all right. Hello, adventurers. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So first and foremost, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where you can be found, all the things you are doing.
Sure. Uh, as Joe said, I'm Natalie Fuinha. You can find me at Natalie Fuinha, where I rarely post, other than like selfies at cons. But I have some old cosplay content on some of the old socials that haven't burned down yet. But mostly, you can find my work at Story Squad Cast, which is the social handle for the Storyteller Squad, which is the Monster of the Week campaign that I run with me and my team. And yeah, that's our tag, literally anywhere that matters. So look us up. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found, because we are an actual play podcast, Spotify and YouTube and all that stuff. So that's where we are on the internet.
Awesome. Okay. If you're ready, we can dive into tonight's episode.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's investigate.
Roll them up. All right. So take me back in time. Bring me back to little 5-pound, 8-ounce Natalie, fresh out the womb. What are we talking about? What's your first kind of introduction into the geek space?
I want to say like Saturday morning cartoons,
Okay.
probably. Like that's where I was introduced to like superheroes and stories about magic and dragons and, heroes fighting monsters, that sort of thing. And I think it was fostered because my family liked when we were playing pretend and not watching TV. So we would get the inspiration, go make up little stories in the backyard. And yeah, I used to play with my like stuffed animals and little figures and things. Yeah, just like inventing stories, pass the time, I guess. But you're a kid. What else do you do? Inventing elaborate backstories and plots and things. And I used to draw. Well, I still draw, but I drew as a kid quite a bit. I would make little comic panels. And I have a couple uncles who used to collect comics. And when they found out I was like, watching like Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four, they actually gave me these old like what were they called? They were like the compiled big,
Okay.
magazines of the comics. So I got like, origins of the Fantastic Four and like when they fight Galactus for the first time, and then like a bunch of Spider-Man stuff from early on, and so it was like, yeah, heroes were sort of my like in, and I want to say I like discovered fantasy as a genre. I mean, Lord of the Rings jumps to mind, but I'm sure there was something before that that made that most especially keyed up to be like, ooh, yeah, fantasy's great. Yeah.
So I want to ask then, what about, because it seems like comic book heroes was kind of like your first real like touchstone memory of geek life. So do you remember like a particular hero or story that was like kind of like really encapsulated it for you?
Ooh. I really liked She-Hulk, especially because there was like a book or, compilation of comics that I got where she had like joined the Fantastic Four and like replaced Ben Grimm. So it was like, oh, there's that girl who can be really strong. That was very cool. And I liked her a lot. And I mean, everybody likes Spider-Man, I guess. And the X-Men, because I like groups of heroes who are friends but also have problems they need to solve together. So, yeah, always a big fan of like Storm and Nightcrawler and Rogue. Rogue is a big favorite for a while there too, because she could have everybody's powers. So that was neat.
So do you think
Yeah.
like the team building aspects of those comics Do you find yourself drawing inspiration from that today when you are building
Constantly.
teams? What part of that do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like is kind of like still touching in your life?
Uh, I think one of the big things I pull from, and it's almost subconscious at this point, but the duality of these heroes who have normal lives that they also have problems in to deal with, on top of like the hero and like supernatural stuff they have to deal with. Um, and so yeah, just that constant back and forth of like, yes, you did have to stop, the Dragon Lord or whoever, but also you have to pick up laundry or your girlfriend's gonna be mad at you. Or, you have to go check in on your aunt who's, in the nursing home or whatever. Like, just that duality that like even for heroes, life continues to be life. And like, I don't know. I've always really liked that groundedness, at least in the versions of comics where things are a little grounded like that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
How do you see that in the stories that you're telling now?
We inject a ton of slice of life into the Storyteller Squad. We have whole episodes sometimes where I'm like, it's downtime. What do you guys want to do? You're not on mission. You're not on the clock. There's nothing like the problems continue to exist, but like you also need days to just take care of yourselves and go visit this NPC friend of yours, see what they're doing, ask them for help, just uh yeah, so we create a lot of space in our stories for those like lulls in the action, I guess is
Uh-huh.
how a good way to describe it, where you need points of rest both as players and the storyteller, the GM, and also the audience. Like if it's just action 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 all the time, like that's great, but like we are a long form series, not a 2-hour action movie. And
Right.
so like there's the ebb and flow of storytelling. If it was all one thing, there would be no stakes because the stakes would start to dull
Hmm.
in terms of how impactful they could be.
So as a creative, how do you make sure that those lulls in the action still are engaging for your audience and like kind of are still able to tell dynamic stories even with this rest period? Like how do you make that part interesting too?
Because that's where the emotional stakes kick in,
Uh-huh.
right? If you're fighting something and uh sorry, I'm reading chat. The like when you have that downtime, that's when your characters get to process
Right.
and like, sort through their feelings about, oh, we had to like, we've had this big fight with this villain and they got away, and that's like frustrating because we've had this long back and forth with them and we feel like we failed, and like, okay, process that. Like that is its own challenge to overcome, right? Um, so I mean, how to make it compelling? I think that's compelling. Is
Yeah.
is the like even shorter answer? Like I think that is compelling
Yeah. Yeah.
inherently. And that like when you have those pauses, the hits, right, the big moments feel bigger because
Yeah.
they have something to contrast against. Um, and like if you don't get to enjoy the reward or the like period of rest after you have accomplished a thing as your characters, or as the story has like given them this win, then the next time they are put in like a dire situation, uh you are reminded that like no, things can be bad but they can also be good. Like there is, I don't know, there's a trend in storytelling, especially in like modern media these days, where like the amount of time you get to celebrate the heroes getting the thing they want, I feel has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, especially with things like Walking Dead, Game of Thrones. Like HBO did this thing in like the whatever, the tens, the teens of the 2000s, where they were just like, what if it sucked all the time? And people were like, "Ooh, I love that." And like, I don't know, I liked those shows at first, but it got kind of tiring
Yeah.
after a while to be like, "Oh, who's gonna like which beloved character that I'm emotionally invested in am I gonna watch literally, choke it on screen?" Like, it's just, and as I mean, especially now, given since the dark times of 2020, like life itself is a little bit bad lately, and I don't really need to be, escaping to worlds where it's even fucking worse.
Fair.
So, yeah.
So let's kind of move forward then a little bit in time as
Mm.
you kind of grown up a little bit. You said you kind of started to get into fantasy, probably with Lord of the Rings. Do you remember kind of like what kind of drew you into the fantasy world besides Lord of the Rings that really captivated your imagination in this the way stories are told in that fantasy space?
Um, I think it's probably just compelling sources of media and like
Hmm.
the aesthetic, right? Like knights and costuming and like I don't know, adventures through nature. Like I really like being outdoors. I don't like camping. I don't like sleeping outdoors. I like
Okay.
being outdoors. And so yeah, I'm trying to think like after Lord of the Rings, what was the thing of like fantasy that I really latched onto? If I glance at my bookshelf, is there anything there? Um, I mean, I like you look at Star Wars, right?
Uh-huh.
People label that as sci-fi. It's more fantasy than anything else. There's magic, right?
Yeah.
Like magic powers and things like that have sort of been all over. And even with comics, like, that blends genre between like superheroes and capes to like, oh, you have like Doctor Strange or magic, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like, I am the sorceress mutant. Like, oh, that's cool. Um, so yeah, and like I suppose Lord of the Rings was like the what does fantasy aesthetic look like in sort of like a modern costuming and elements vibe. And so once I enjoyed that, anything that had that type of look to it was intriguing because it was like, oh, this will be a similar story but about different characters with different magic.
Hmm.
Um, I really liked Wheel of Time.
Ooh, okay.
Robert Jordan wrote and then Brandon Sanderson finished out. Um, so like that, it's funny because I haven't read a lot of fantasy novels, but I've
Right.
like listened to that series on audiobook maybe 3 times all the way
Nice.
through. I just love the world building and the like characters and just yeah, every time I listen or read through that series, I prefer a different protagonist each
Hmm.
time, which is I think is a sign of like fun and good writing.
Yeah.
You can be like, oh, this time through, this character's annoying the heck out of me, but this person,
Fuck
I had
Rand.
them wrong the first time. Like, yeah, exactly.
I don't
It's
give a
like,
shit if he's the Dragon Reborn.
ah, Rand, what an asshole. But then you read it again, you're like, man, this guy's got so much pressure on his back, and then you like, all the anyway. Uh, so yeah, so I really liked that series, and for some reason, like, didn't then say like I'm gonna read a bunch of other
Hmm.
like fantasy. I was aware of Dragon Age. I never played it. I've since watched playthroughs of it, and I think it's a fun story. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say when exactly I was like fantasy's cool.
Okay.
It just is.
So what kind of
But
at what point did you step into tabletop games then? Like what kind of was your first foray into that scene?
so my first ever foray into a role-playing game was the Prince Valiant role-playing game. And
Okay.
this was like so early. Like I might have been 12 or like something like that. And it was just this book. And I remember I think I like pulled it off the shelf of a family friend we were visiting on like a vacation that we took one time. And I was like flipping through because there's like, you know, knights and heroes and princesses and dragon and like, oh wow, this is cool. And the whoever what family friend we were visiting was just like, you can take it. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, okay. And so I like didn't really understand how to play. It had like a coin flipping system to determine like successes and things like that. And I like
Okay.
tried to learn it, but then I had like no one to play with because I was a kid and I, as a nerdy, repressed queer kid, I did not have a lot of friends, and like not a lot of chances to like then tell my like rambunctious peers at the time, like, do you want to sit and like imagine things for a long time and not run around and throw, whatever at each other? Like, wasn't gonna happen. So I would
Let's
like play by
dramatically flip this
myself.
coin.
Yeah, I'd play by myself, with like Legos. Like I had like a foresty, maybe knights or whatever, like Lego set, and I would make the little characters do stuff and tell stories that way. So it was the first ever game I played as a role playing game, but I mean, it doesn't really count because I don't know anyone who's ever heard of that game. It's based on an old comic, I guess, which I've never read. But anyway, so then in my actual like proper introduction into TTRPGs was in 2015, I want to say, and some friends of mine who worked at a LARPing after school program, who I had just met through like the queer community, were like, "We're gonna play D&D with some friends from work. Do you want to come check it out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I'd known about D&D, and I think I'd seen like monster manuals and books like that in like hobby shops because my dad paints like kits and things, and so we would go and like it was all one
Right.
shop. So I would be flipping through those books while he was like selecting paints or whatever. So I knew what D&D was, but I didn't really know how to play or who played it. And there was kind of that thing of like, well, I'm a nerd and I'm into like video games and stuff and whatever, but like D&D, that's way too nerdy. I would never cross that line, and then like, and same thing with LARP. It was like, well, now I play D&D, but like LARPing, I don't know. And now I did LARPing for a long time. But yeah, so I played a few sessions of D&D. I have a feeling it was back when like 5e was like just sort of getting its revival, and so people were like, we want to try the new rules, and so everyone was sort of new to the process. And like many campaigns, it lasted about 4 sessions, and then it was over in terms of like who could make it
Yeah.
and commit. And so, but then the friend who had invited me, she set up and started running like multiple concurrent groups of a like interconnected Mouse Guard campaign. And so
Okay.
the Mouse Guard role-playing game was like my first long like experience with a TTRPG campaign and a character, right? And getting into that. Um, and at the same time, this was also about when I was introduced to the friend group who would like pull me into LARPing. And so then I was like doing that at the same time and just getting a lot of experience with live role play, collaborative storytelling, both like fully immersed and also at the table and over long periods. And so, yeah. And I like ran some D&D on the side for friends, trying to get them into it. And it doesn't work out all the time. Sometimes you're like, try this, and people have a good time, and then it's like they don't get the bug. They don't want to keep doing it. So,
Right.
yeah. That's my early days of tabletop, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of how do we go from just doing all these live games, doing LARPing, into now we're producing content online? Like, what is the first step into the online space for storytelling?
The world shut down and there was nothing to do.
Okay.
Is a real big part of it, honestly. Prior to that, I had been basically like running myself through a self-directed atelier program in cosplay, where I just like found people and friends who I knew were really skilled, and I would go and work with them either on their projects or have them help me with mine. And I like leveled up my ability as both a crafter and an artist a ton, for like, I don't know, 3 years or so. And I was getting to the point where I was like about ready to start like getting work from clients at conventions and be like, I'll cosplay your character and come like model for you, be that whatever. Um, and then everything shut down and there were no conventions to go do that at. And so what was there to do? Animal Crossing, go to the grocery store in your respirator and take walks to avoid the insanity. Um, and around that time, I was in the New England Critters Discord, which is just a Critical Role fan group for New England folks, who mostly I met through like the cosplay scene up here, and they were hosting weekly or every couple weeks, one-shot Sundays, and people would just say, "I'm running this 5e module," or "I'm doing this little thing I've had planned for a bit," and sometimes people would bring games outside of D&D and say like, I'm gonna run an intro to this game because I really like it, or I'm gonna try this one. So I got to try a bunch of different like sort of one-off samples of games, but one of the very first ones was Monster of the Week, which
Okay.
I had heard about through um, the arc that the Adventure Zone did using that system, and I'd liked that story and was sort of like interested in, ooh, I really like modern fantasy. Let me check this out. And like a few pages into the book, I was just like, oh, I really like what this is doing in terms of like leaning into a genre and facilitating that genre of supernatural and modern magic and stuff like that.
Okay.
Um, it just really hit for me in a way that like was reminding me of like all the work I did as an illustration major in college, where that was my like senior thesis, was just like doing illustrations of myth and folklore, but like translated into what it might be in the modern day.
Okay.
Um, like Hellboy and Constantine and like movies like that within that like genre
Right.
were sort of my like pull into that type of story, like Underworld to an extent, although that's a little ugh.
Okay.
um but yeah, just that vibe of like it's fantasy, but you know, there's cars and stuff and
Right.
people have their day jobs and everything else. Ironically, I was like never into Supernatural or Buffy, which are like the two mainstays that people reference when they think Monster of the Week.
Okay.
And I've seen nothing but like YouTube short clips of either of them. Um, but uh, yeah, so I played this one shot of Monster of the Week.
Mhm.
Had an amazing time, loved the system, bought the book like immediately after that, and was like, I want to learn how to run this. And then like in reading the section for the GM of that book, I was like, this has so much good philosophy. Like I just vibe with this so much, and like it's so easy to prep for and design, you know, ideas. And also because of all that stuff that I did in college, I already had like a lot of sort of ideas I could like reach it in the back of my mind and be like, oh, there was that illustration I did of this thing. What if I did a story about that? What if I pulled this forward? And so it was like like my brain was just like world building and populating a setting to tell that kind of story in
Uh-huh.
unbidden. Like it was just I could not stop it. And you know, having nothing to do but take walks and think about it probably helped. But yeah, so that's where that all kicked off. And then I was like, well, I think maybe I'll do an actual play, because at that point I'd gotten into Critical Role,
Right.
and like listening to APs. Like I listened to I think in order, Acquisitions Incorporated, who was did it first. We all of us owe them a lot. Shout out to those folks. Um, and then the Adventure Zone, and then oh, what was it called? The old official like D&D AP series with Chris Perkins,
Oh, I don't
and like Anna
know.
Prosser, Holly
Yeah.
Conrad, those folks. Was it Dice Camera Action? I think it was Dice Camera Action.
Sounds familiar.
Um, Love that series. Such a good series. Um, yeah. So anyway, so I'd been into AP for a while. And I don't know, something just was like, well, there's nothing to do. I could teach myself audio editing, I suppose. Let's look into it. Well, what is a podcast? Let me take a look. I think
got a
also
free
around this,
Saturday.
yeah, like I have a free the foreseeable future, you know, like and yeah, I think around that time too, like maybe the McElroys had just released their book, like How to Podcast or something like that, and I shamefully never bought that or read it, but it was just like, if they can write a book about this, there must be like resources on how to do it. And I remember I think I was like at the time really on like a NADPOD kick,
Okay.
and was just like really enjoying like, I don't know, just the idea of being like, well, if I could tell a story like this with friends of mine, I think I would be okay at it. Like everyone's always said I'm a pretty good GM. I'd started to do like directing at LARPs. So I was coordinating a lot of the plot writing and the cast coordination and like running scenes for people. Um, and it felt like the right time. And so then I messaged a bunch of friends and some people were like, I can't, or I'm not interested, or I don't want to do a podcast. And it was like, okay, well, everyone who said yes to all of those things, we did session 0, we did safety tools, we got ourselves set up to play and start a story, and then we did, and there was like pretty immediate chemistry between the cast and our characters, and people just were excited. I think it helped too that like no one else had anything better to do, so you play a fun game and then you just have nothing to do but obsess over it for the next week, so
Yeah.
you're excited about the next one. And plus a lot of people were out of work or couldn't work or were on like whatever, and so weekly games were easy, and so you built up a lot of consecutive
Yeah.
memories and bonding with these folks right away. And then as we started to approach like 2021 and sort of finally coming out of that period of like isolation and metamorphosis, I don't know. Like, to be clear, the pandemic was terrible. It should never have lasted in the state that it did for as long as it did, but it definitely did sort of put a pause on my life as a creative person who'd been trying to make freelance artistry
Hmm.
and stuff work for a long time, and just sort of be like, reevaluate what do you care about the most? Is
Right.
it rendering? Is it concept? Is it design? It's like, no, it's stories. I like those things because they are attached to the stories, and I think that's really the thing I enjoy, is having all of that connected to this thing,
Yeah.
right? And because I had seen actual play as this vehicle to tell a story without it all needing to fall on my shoulders, and also the fun and the like real magic at the table that happens of unexpected things or random chance with a dice roll or things like that, where really it's the group effort and the collaborative nature of that storytelling that makes it so powerful. And I think well, I won't place value judgments on it. Like, it's not better than just solo writing, but it certainly, for me, is a more fulfilling like process
Hmm.
because it involves community,
Yeah.
right? Communities, I think, been a thing I've more and more started to see as like a priority in my life, and so being able to take this thing I'm passionate about and this like words, this drive to create and share imaginative narratives, um, being able to do that not alone is incredible. So yeah, so anyway, as the world recovered, we buckled down and I started editing and we started publishing, and like immediate response was like way more than I'd ever expected, which was very cool. Still like very indie numbers, but it was like 150 people listened to the first episode. That's so much. I know a lot of them are like friends of mine I told to check it out, but like, dang, you know? Um, and yeah, like, I don't know. I mean, since then, that's like a whole separate interview. Like, what's the history of TSS? But it's
Hmm.
been wild and rewarding and frustrating and joyful and scary. But like, I have never felt more like I've found the thing I'm supposed to be doing than
Yeah.
when I'm working on TSS stuff. Like, it just and like engaging in this art form in this community. So
So, what? Talk to me now. Like, tell me about everything you guys have been doing over at the Storyteller Squad, because I know it's you guys do a ton of things now. Like,
mm,
you guys have booths at cons, which is something I definitely want to dive into with you about the whole like what inspired you to do that. But
mm,
tell me about like just a little bit of the origin story there. I know the pandemic, like you said, kind of brought you to where you are, and you said you got like 150 views on that first episode. What At what point were you like, oh, we're hitting something here, and like we can we can really like keep going with this?
ooh, there's there's lots of little checkpoints,
Yeah.
right? Like save file checkpoints. I can like recall if I go through it like in order, right? Um, there was like getting our first few episodes out and having like not just 10 or 15 followers, but like 100 at first, and then like a dip to like 80. Wow, that's still a lot. 75, still a lot. And then like a consistent like 50 to 60 for a little bit, which is
Wow.
like, I mean, that's good for like someone who's just starting out
Yeah.
and has nothing, in terms of reach online for this thing to have traction immediately from, right? And like also the fact that I was learning, right? I was figuring out how to edit and what I wanted the show to sound like, and also just basically self-teaching myself audio editing and sound design and scoring eventually, and working with either like doing the art myself, or we have a very talented artist Emery on the team, and like working with him to make little sketches or pieces for what we're doing, and then also music composers to get like themes for all the characters. That was one of our early things that we did, um, and we got like early sponsors, which at the time I can look back now and be like, those were friends of mine who had little small businesses who were like, maybe I'll get one lead out of this, right? And it was like $25 or something. Of
Yeah.
like, here's money. Like, great, thank you. We had some very generous friends who were like fans of it right away and gave us like little donations so we could afford better mics, and we would like upgrade our equipment. Um, and yeah, just I mean, like everyone in my team at the start sort of looked at it as like, Natalie's really into doing this thing, so we'll go along with it, and like maybe it'll be something, but like probably it won't. And then like I kept pulling stuff off, and they'd be like, wait, we hit how many downloads? So we had 1,000 downloads already? And I'm like, yeah. What? I don't know, guys. I think we're pretty good at this. Like, or I mean, I kept going to conventions once they came back,
Right.
and I had made like interesting friendships prior to everything shutting down, where I like befriended a couple CEOs of like groups just because I would be there in my costume and just like admiring the work they were doing, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you look incredible, and I'm like, thanks, I worked hard, and they're like, that's great. And so we would just vibe, and so like coming back into those spaces and being like, I wonder if I go to this gaming convention, I could like talk to those people that I know and see if they want to do something with my show now.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, like we made friends quickly, which is a thing I'm good at, which is not to brag about that, but to say that like I like meeting people. I like working with other artists. I like seeing what other people are excited about and passionate about. Um, and like I genuinely would like to again collaborate, because I think the more people you can work with, the better your own art becomes, because you get exposed to more ideas and more um, skill and talent right within the community. And so yeah, I started going to shows not with the intention of like, I'm going to that show to cosplay and like wander around, and I would go with the intention of like, I'm going to this convention and I will be in cosplay because it's eye-catching. But
Hmm.
my goal is to make connections and try and find sponsors, guests, friends who might want to, do something with the show. Uh, we made friends with a bunch of other Monster of the Week podcasts who also kind of all started in like 2019, 2020.
Okay.
And started doing like cross promotion with them. And so we had like a community of like fellow podcasters we were growing into and making friends with. Um, we, gosh, like I started to drop serious money on stuff where I'd be
Yeah.
like, let's get a plane ticket. Like I'd never traveled for cons outside of like the New England area except KatsuCon. And I only did that one because like my friend asked me if I would drive her car down so that she could fly down but have all her cosplay stuff
Okay.
there. And I'd be like, well, I want to go. She's like, well, if I give you my car and you drive it down, I have 2 more days of school until February vacation or whatever. And so I need to fly down. But you can come with me if we do this thing. I was like, great. That was like the most travel I'd ever done for conventions. But once I started having like success and finding, this networking thing that I sort of became good at quickly, it was like, well, we should go to more than just PAX East. Like,
Yeah.
what if we did PAX Unplugged and PAX West and Gen Con and like, uh, yeah, like Gen Con 2023 was really like the turning point where something clicked, and I was like, not only do I think I fit with this crowd, but they all seem welcoming enough and like open enough to accept me as a creator and what I have to offer, and like the specific unique thing that I'm doing that both like makes me and my group unique, but also is like close enough to what all these people are doing that we have this thing in common that we can bond over and want to share together. And so, yeah, that was just a crazy event. I met a ton of people, and they were all so gracious and kind and welcoming. Yeah, if I met you at Gen Con 2023, know that like you really made a big impact on my life that weekend. Whew, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Uh, and then also Big Bad that same year was another big like milestone of like,
Yeah.
wow, I think there's real potential here, because
Yeah.
that was one of the first shows people were starting to like recognize me. I guess we should address that I am not in my like persona. Normally I'm this
Yes.
witch. I don't know if it'll focus. Anyway, I have this witch look that I started wearing in 2023 to these shows, and it became my like signature thing.
Yeah.
Uh and just because it was like a decent fit and, you know, I guess flashy enough, unique enough that people were like, whoa, and they do double takes. Be like, oh, that's the witch. Oh, she's here. Right. And so people would start to approach me and be like, wow, oh my gosh, I know you from something. And I'm like, you do? What? um, yeah. And then just like, I don't know, very serendipitous things of like, one of my cast is friends with a very prominent creator, and so like we ended up getting to meet them, and that was very cool, and sort of a feeling of like, we have all these connections. I like, and not to frame it as like we were trying to like leverage all these people to like give us these things, but it was like, we want to do something with them that would be both fun and rewarding for them to participate in, and rewarding for us to like, you know, have this collaboration happen on a professional level. At that time, I don't know that we were pros, but we were sort of treating it professionally, and I think that helps a lot too. That we were not just like, I don't know, like asking for favors out of hand, you know, or like without there being like some understanding of like that for them it is business.
Yeah.
For where they were at, and you know, in their thing, and for us it was like, it'd be really cool if we got to play with you or do this thing. So
Maybe.
maybe, yeah, exactly that energy. You know, if you want. But I think also like I have that like, how do I make this thing that I want to do seem appealing to someone who is very busy, right, and has offers coming in from all over. It's like part of making it, I want to say, in this space is knowing how to make your stuff stand out as like a worthwhile, like, you know, commitment or piece of their time. Yeah, experience. And we were sort of served very serendipitously. When was the OGL debacle? Was that 23 or 24?
Wasn't, I think it was early 24, right?
If it was early 24, that kind of makes sense. Because, yeah, around that time, everyone was just like all bent out of shape over D&D and WotC, and like, you know.
Yeah.
But my group plays Monster of the Week. We have nothing to do with that. But we're still doing the thing. We're still telling stories and playing games and talking about magic and monsters. So we reached out, and that was like one of the early times where we sort of used our uniqueness and the thing that we do different to our advantage, right? And like, again, coming from a sincere desire to collaborate and make a cool thing, and you know, for the art, but also to say that like, I bet these people whose whole lives are D&D and are real sick of thinking about D&D right now would love a break. And so we just reached out and offered, like, do you want to play a game for fun? That's not D&D. You want to like, I know the word is going around. We're gonna try other systems. We can go elsewhere. Like, we don't have to be tied down to like one company, one game. And it was like, well, I'm very good at this other game, and you would like it, I bet. So let's hang out. And that happened a few times and went really well. And again, it was just like another win, another win, another win, another thing, like in the bucket of like stepping stones towards feeling like I think we have a space in the space, right? We are doing enough and treating it with enough care and respect that it's starting to become more than just, oh, let's play a game and record it. Yeah. So, gosh, other wins. I mean, 2024 was also the year that we started vending.
Yes,
you were saying you want to hear about boothing, and like, I think we made that decision that it was something we wanted to try at PAX West in 2023. Me and two of my cast went out to that show, and we kind of treated it as like a working vacation. We were like, we've never done this show. We've never been out here. We don't know what it's going to be like, but it was a lovely time, and it was so nice. But we were done, quote unquote, with the convention and like seeing who we could see and work with on day one.
Yeah.
Because we'd already met a ton of these people at PAX East.
Okay.
Like something about like the vending community, right? Like people who are exhibitors, it's a small group of people.
Yeah.
And I say small meaning like it's hundreds of people, but hundreds is small in an entire industry, right? And for these conventions that serve tens of thousands of people on the regular. So you just see a lot of the same people doing the shows because that's their job, is to go and sell stuff at shows. And we had just been going to cons since like, mid 2021 with the intent of like plugging the Storyteller Squad, that it was like, well, we know half the people here and the other half are in fields that don't really apply to our stuff. So what do we do? I guess we just hang out and have a nice time this weekend. But like, I think we're starting to hit diminishing returns on like going to these shows and getting like a reward for the networking we're doing. Because it's like you can only wander the show so much and be like, hi, good to see you. Don't want to do something? Before you're like, well, we either are or we can't, or it's not in the cards right now, or whatever. So we got to do something else because this isn't helping us build audience, right? It's not building our platform for the show itself. And it was just like, well, how hard is it to run a booth? The people, nerds are at these conventions, and many of the nerds here listen to actual play. So what if we had a booth and promoted ourselves that way? Which is to say, that is the solve that I like doubled down on because I don't like making short form content.
Okay.
I will fully admit that if I had invested a fraction of the amount of time that I have put towards our vending and exhibiting at conventions towards learning and getting moderately good at short form, we probably would have a bigger platform. But I just fucking hate short form that much that I will instead like hemorrhage capital and investment funds and like hours and hours and hours and sleepless nights developing product and merch and like figuring out what about our show is like broad appeal enough that it will attract even strangers and people who like don't know anything about the story, right? Or have that emotional connection to us as a cast. I'll do all that if it means I don't have to come up with a 7-second skit.
Okay, so I want to ask, like, you say like you're designing this broad appeal where you can appeal to a broad audience through this booth. What does that look like for you? Like, what are you what are you kind of like preparing?
I have examples. I got them ready. I'll just hold them back
examples.
here so that they can maybe be in focus. We did stickers
Okay.
with cryptids on them. People
Nice.
like monsters.
They
like
do.
people just like creatures. Here's one. There's our jackalope.
Okay, so that's something you guys have made.
I made this as like ad or rather like booth display
Okay.
decor,
Okay.
because it's based on one of the characters in the show. We have pins of this character. We have art prints coming, and we are in the middle of developing a plush that could be mass produced of
Okay.
them. It will look kind of similar. And we did enamel pins. Like here's our Loch Ness monster pin.
Oh, jeez.
Um, Here's Moth Girl. She's very popular. People love people love our trans icon, Moth Cryptid. But yeah, so uh monsters, and I'd seen booths elsewhere that were using cryptid as like a theme of their merch and doing
Yeah.
okay. So I was like, I think that'll work fine. And it has worked fine. Like we had to do it and try it and learn what was gonna work and what wasn't. It's been a very I think it is going well. It's hard to say right now because we are in like the first year, and the first year of any startup is just you're in the red a
Yeah.
lot and
Yeah.
constantly, and it doesn't seem to slow down anytime soon because it's just there's a lot of things you got to pay for up front. And especially with conventions because all the contracts are done months in advance.
Right.
Like I have my whole 2025 planned out in terms of appearances and like stuff I have to go to or events I'm going to go to, whether it's exhibiting or just networking, right? And just write that off as like a networking expense. But yeah, it's we thought about it really hard, and my team is amazing, and we would have long meetings like we used to play every week, and now we play maybe back-to-back weeks in chunks. And then
Okay.
the other weeks we are still meeting on our same like weekly meetup night, but a lot of the time it's for like team meetings to be
Yeah.
like, all right, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. Someone's working on this. Okay, you work on this. I'll do this. We'll body double for a bit. All right, check in after 20 minutes. How we doing? Like, and just, it's a full team effort. I like, I have this reputation both with my team, and now it's starting to spread into like just generally accepted amongst the TTRPG space that like I worked really hard and I do a lot, which is true. But my team also works really hard, and like I'm the only one who has taken the big leap of faith on this to say like I'm gonna do this full time.
Okay.
Right. Like I'm living at home right now. I am just throwing money from like college tuition I didn't use. Like the journey for me and for like to make the Storyteller Squad happen, you couldn't recreate uh by like following the same steps. Like I don't think it would be possible because
Right.
like I had, the privilege of like white girl, middle income family who, was valedictorian in high school, so I got a full ride to college. So all the tuition money that was like in my name just eventually ended up being my money that my parents had set aside, and I didn't touch it. Like I could have like moved out right away and just been like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, pay rent and whatever, and then it would have been gone and thrown away.
Yeah.
But I sat on it and I waited. I waited for like things that felt important enough to want to pull it out and spend on it. And not everyone can do that. Not
Yeah.
everyone is able to have that like financial literally privilege
Yeah.
to be able to like do that and say like, yeah, no, quit your job that you have right now and focus on this like dream passion project. Like it's not doable right now by a lot of people, which is really a shame. But also because I can do it and I can like I have this shot to sort of gamble on risking
On yourself. You're gambling on yourself.
on myself, yeah,
Yeah.
like my effort, and say that like
Yeah.
no, I will follow through. I will work hard to make this happen. Like it there is no side of it either that is just I have a bunch of money and I throw it at problems to solve it. It's like I have a little bit of money that I am very judiciously saying this investment
Yeah.
counts, this investment counts, et cetera, et cetera. And like by the end of it, I will either be out or I will have paid a lot of money to create a job for myself.
Hey, if you're doing what you
Whoa,
love,
the
it's
reward!
worth it, right?
Like the reward will be now you get to work at this forever.
You've built yourself your pine box.
Yep. Yeah. So it's tough. It is not easy to start vending or exhibiting. And certainly no one should come at it with the same level of like uh naivete
Yeah.
and like over optimistic projections that I did. Like our first show we ever did was PAX East, which
Okay.
is insane to be like, yeah, we've never vended anywhere. Let me buy a spot at one of the most expensive conventions, period. Right? Now you can say, but because you did that show, you also got to do the show on the West Coast. And now you've learned how to vend in 2 different parts of the country in a single year.
Yeah.
It also means that you've made friends with the organizers and they set you up with a space at Unplugged at the last minute. And you were like, good to just go do that.
Yeah.
And now you're in that circuit of like one of the biggest gaming cons, period. And like unless we back out, we're in. We can just do that show forever now. And same with like the shows we're getting into now for the first time this year in 2025. It's a lot of like, yeah, no, it's probably going to be either a loss or breaking even the first time while you figure it out. But then you're in.
Yeah.
And then you get to try again. You get to adapt. You get to learn and come at it with a different strategy than you did when you were going in blind.
Let me ask you this then. Is the intention behind the booth to sell the merch to make money, or is the intention behind the booth to spread? Obviously they can be the same thing, but when you visualize it, was it to spread Storyteller Squad, the show, or was it to like make money selling merch?
It was
Obviously
100. I mean, it was 100% both those things. So I guess 50% one, 50% the other, maybe. The goal was to, yes, get eyes on our stuff, which is actually advice I got from one of my editors, who had his own podcast and was like, "Do you guys do cons?" And I was like, "Well, I'm doing this con right now." He's like, "I don't mean just going to like talk to people. Like, do you ever table?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You should. We do it, and it always gets us a return on like a boost in listenership or whatever."
Does
I'm
it
like,
really? That was my next question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like it was a thing where the exposure of going to the show and having a booth and having cards and being like, "We're a podcast. Check us out. Check us out. Check us out." You're gonna hit, so many more leads doing that than a social post these days because of like the way the algorithms work.
Yeah.
Having like direct interactions with people and having them see your stuff and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cute," or "Oh wow, that's cool. What is it?" And you tell them and they're like, "Oh, I'm definitely gonna check you out." And maybe they do, maybe they don't, but that's, a better shot at them actually becoming a listener and a fan than paying Meta $20 to, throw it up so that people can scroll past it in a fit of doom scrolling. So like, and then it was a thing too of like, well, if we do this but we don't cover the cost of doing it,
right,
we can't do it we can't just continue to do it, right? It's too expensive to do and not at least make enough to cover the expense of the trip and the setup and everything else. So it's sort of become its own side of what TSS is to me. It's both, I want to be able to do the storytelling and the editing and the, working with other creators to have them as guests and things like that. I would love if that was all I had to do.
Yeah.
But this is late stage capitalism, and until our audience grows enough, we can't support that continuously, given the amount of work it takes, the quality to which I uphold our stuff to now, and just like the hours literally it takes to do all that stuff. without there being some financial support to it or some way for me to be like paying my bills and surviving by making that work count.
Yeah.
So boothing, which is really its own like side business aspect, right? It's all under the same umbrella, but it's a completely separated thing I've had to learn of how to do retail, how to do convention merch, and what appeals to people. What are people looking for these days? What are people willing to spend what little extra spending money they have on, right?
Hmm.
Um, and just like having mentors there. My big thing is I've had a lot of really generous and kind teachers uh, just throughout my life. Um, and I don't know what I did to get that lucky.
I mean, it could just be that you're a good person and draw good people to you.
You got to go and say the thing.
Could it be luck, or could
Yeah.
it be genuine hard work and a good person?
You decide, internet.
Yes, because the internet is never wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, as we're kind of getting ready to wrap up here, then, is there any like dream project or collaboration that you kind of like are looking to do in the future?
How big do you want me to shoot?
Go big, go big or go home.
I want a season on D20.
Okay.
They haven't done Monster of the Week yet,
Uh-huh.
to my knowledge. They may have something in production now. I don't know. But so far, they haven't run Monster of the Week on that show, and I feel like my Witch Keeper would be a real fun tagline. Just hello, adventurers, hat, nat.
Yeah.
I would love to work with those folks. They are such an inspiration, and uh they are doing AP the way I wish I could do AP, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't have a studio, so we don't have a video component to our story, but like the way I edit our show, the way I try to work with guests and bring them in and do the world building, it's all very much inspired by the craft and the like care put into the production of those seasons. And that series, and I would love really this whole path of mine into this industry has been a desire to say like I I think I have something that I can like contribute that is of the caliber that these people are doing, um and it would just be an honor and a privilege to be able to do that with them
Yeah.
and to like you know uh uh yeah, do the thing. So
Do the thing. Um, Mel, I know you're in chat. Clip that and send it to D20. Um,
hi guys. Rick Perry has my information, apparently.
God damn it,
People
Rick.
gave it to him. So, hi, Rick. I'm sorry I missed you a big bad. We'll talk sometime.
Okay.
Yeah,
We kind of already
that's
touched.
the big one.
Yeah. Is there anyone like you want to bring on to Storyteller Squad?
Oh, like dream guests.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I mean, anyone from those series. But let me see. Hmm. Ooh. I'm gonna say some actors, just because, like,
Okay.
yeah, anyone from TTRPG space, I would
Right.
love to work with you.
Right.
But
Right.
like, if we're saying like you want to pick a real
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
shot pull, I would love to get Summer Glau or Catherine McNamara, who are
Mhm.
like two people who like roles they have played in similar like modern fantasy series
Yeah.
like helped inspire the like character that I play in the series, where
Okay.
she's like this like tough little feisty tank of a character. Yeah, that would be just very surreal to do something with them. And like separate, or I suppose I shouldn't say separate, but like um I am looking to and have some like things in the works that I think it would be really fun to work on the crew from Drawfee with.
Okay.
So those are my two thing. My celebrity pulls and my like outside of TTRPG space pulls that I think would be fun to bring in and work together.
Okay. We've kind of already talked about this, but the pivotal moment, a turning point in your career that has kind of shaped how you make content creation. That's been, I feel like we've kind of discussed all that already throughout this whole interview. How it's all been this
Yeah, I
series of
mean,
steps.
the moment I decided I was going to do this full time and
Yeah.
like leave the job I was in currently to give this my full effort and what that
Mm-hmm.
might look like was PAX West 2024. We did not do well at that show. Like
Okay.
we made some money, but it did not like cover the cost
Oh,
of
okay.
doing
Okay.
it. And like, but really that was the only thing that went wrong. It was just we didn't make enough.
Right.
Bad placement, low traffic, whatever. It didn't work out. That happens. Uh, and so I was like sort of in my feelings about that and just feeling like, "Ah, man, like if this keeps happening, I don't know if we can keep it going. Like I don't know that I've got it, but my team were like, we're gonna make you dinner, Natalie. Just take a second. Like feel your feelings, but it's gonna be okay. We're doing fine. Like it's all good. And I was like, yeah, all right. So I went out on our Airbnb. And we had this little like outdoor a balcony. It was like a little outdoor balcony. And so I sit down and I'm just like staring out at like the Seattle harbor, mountain, mist, clouds, sun like, setting in the sky, and just like sat there and just listened to like the ocean and the shipping district and the market and people moving around. Like, just it was a moment of like quiet that I just was like, I don't care. I don't care how long it takes. I'm gonna do this. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. um. Yeah. So that was the big moment where I
Right.
was like, no, we've come this far with me only being able to give half effort because I've had these other commitments and things that were like taking my time, and I was like, I I have to see if the solve is give it 110%, because if that's what it is, that's what I want to do anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah,
You
that was
guys are
that was
killing it.
that was big. That's the big last checkpoint, I
Yeah.
guess. Was when I had that moment on the balcony out there. So,
And you guys are out here killing it.
yeah, doing our best.
Amazing. Uh, that's gonna kind of bring us towards the end of our interview, Nat. But I do have one last question that we kind of wrap all these interviews up with. Um,
Mm.
what message or impact do you hope to leave through your content on the space?
There is space within this industry for all sorts of stories, provided that they are told with intention and inclusivity and uh, embrace the joy of what it is that we are very lucky in this like age in history to be able to even consider as a career.
Mm-hmm.
um and that like there is enough opportunity for success for everyone. um it doesn't have to be a competition. It can be a collective. um and in terms of like, I don't know, the themes of our stories, the same old found family, working together overcomes all, which is echoing what I just said. But um I suppose our like unique thing is what I mentioned earlier, the like that stories also need times to rest, and even if your characters are fictional, it doesn't mean they don't deserve a day off.
Amazing. Natalie, this has been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been very poignant looking back and
You
seeing all the stuff we did.
guys have accomplished a lot, especially, I mean, all the
Yeah.
hard work you guys put in. We are going to open up the chat to viewer questions. So if you have any questions for Nat, it's okay if I call you Nat. I'm sorry, I
Hit
don't know. I
me.
didn't clear that before.
Oh, Natalie, it's whatever.
Okay, just nicknaming you.
Yeah.
If you have any questions for Natalie, go ahead and start putting those in the chat. While those are coming in, we're going to jump over to our dicey question segment. This is 20 random questions determined by a dice roll, and I need you, Natalie, to go ahead and roll me a d20.
Okay. Oh, it's cocked. We got to honor the cock. Hang on. Stop. Okay. 15.
15. Okay. Do you have a... What is your favorite movie, and what do you think is the most overrated movie?
Oh, man. Favorite movie. God, that's...
Just getting that thrown on you.
I know. It's like, do I say something artsy, or do I just say like the thing I could binge all the time? Oh gosh. Man. Help me out. Media on my wall. Favorite movie. Sorry, I just like movies are. I mean, you're asking a storyteller, what's your favorite story? That's like, oh yeah, let me just pick from the thousands I've ingested.
Well, what's the movie you
Oh
can find yourself
gosh.
binge anytime it's on? You just
Anytime.
on.
The like the Endgame 2-parter.
Okay.
Infinity War Endgame, like, I mean, we started the Envy, right?
Yeah.
Heroes are where I got my start, and those two, like, they're not perfect films, but just like the nostalgia factor of what it was like to experience those when they came out at like the height of that, franchise's popularity, and also just, like those characters, right? Regardless of who the actor was playing them, or whether it was like the cartoons when I was little or whatever, they mean a lot and have like shaped a lot of, what I think about in terms of like what heroic adventure is like. So yeah, and I mean, honestly, the score in those movies is really good, and that's a big part of what informs like favorite movies I have. Is like whether the music is good or not. And that's like informed a lot of how I present our work. So yeah.
Okay. What do you think is the most overrated movie in your opinion?
Overrated movies? Oh, what was really big a while ago? No, I can't drag that movie. It's a good movie. It's just it wasn't my like favorite. Oh man. What's your least favorite? Insult now, the one story out of hundreds.
I never said I was a good person. I feel like I start every
God,
conversation
I
with like,
thought
hey,
15 was gonna be a good roll, and I've really set myself up for this like brain twister. Oh man. Overrated. What is that? Like probably some animated thing.
Okay.
Probably some, animated thing that got made, and it's fine. It was for kids, but like it got way more hype than it needed to.
Okay.
Whatever movie you want to say like spawned the obsession with Minions, I feel like that's definitely an overrated aspect of a movie that didn't need to become a cultural like touchstone.
That's a fair answer.
Yeah. And like I like the first Despicable Me, but like I don't think we didn't need 12 movies or whatever the hell it's been. Yeah.
All right, give me another dice roll. I'll let you we'll move on.
Okay, help me recover. Give me like a quick fire. What can you do for me, dice? 16. Good lord,
Good
it's gonna
God.
be
Oh,
right
this
next
is
to it.
yeah, this is no better. Zombie apocalypse survival plan. Go.
What zombie survival plan?
Yeah.
Okay, actually no, this is easy because my friends and I were really into this for a little bit, and we would like come up with things. Um, zombie survival plan. There's a building in Connecticut,
Okay.
and it is built such that it like has its base, and then there's just these like two elevator columns or stairwell columns up to a much larger space, and then there's like this empty platform in the middle of it. And I used to drive by it all the time going to capoeira events in DC when I was like training with my martial arts group, and we would always pass and be like, that's the place, everyone. Zombies happen, that
This is where
becomes
we're
the
going.
fortress. Like,
Meet here.
yep, exactly, because it's defensible. You have this
Yeah.
like, it's like a modern tower. But anyway, so that's the place. That's the survival plan. What would I specifically do in a
Yeah.
zombie survival?
What's your job?
I don't know, because like my eyes are gonna get worse, and like I'll probably die. Like honestly, I don't do enough cardio. I but if I could get to that building, I
Just
could
make it to the
totally
building.
become like the quartermaster and do like all the organization of like, we have this much supply, we have this, you get this amount of ration, we have to do a run,
Yeah.
someone's got to come back with it, we got to start a farm, like, you know, I would very much take on like an organizational
I love it.
role. And as much as I would like to think that I could like then have plenty of time to work out and get jacked, I'm not the type of person who's gonna be running around with a machete just like offing the undead.
Hey, every job's important in the apocalypse, god damn it.
It is okay to be an NPC in the
Yes.
apocalypse.
No, it's not. You're not an NPC. You're a very important part of the team. All right, we've got a couple questions, so give me one more dice roll, and then we'll move over to those viewer questions.
Alrighty. If I roll 17, okay, 7.
Oh, okay, this is a good one for you. If you had to befriend any superhero, who would you hang out with and why?
Ooh. Who would I hang out with? Gosh. I think I think you gotta choose Spider-Man. He's just such a sweetie. Like, and like, literally, he's the type of person who would hang out with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't feel like, oh, you're taking up their time, or like they have something better. It's like, he would totally, I think Spider-Man would totally just like, if you were his friend, want to make time to hang out with you. And I'm also a busy person who works way too hard. So it'd be that thing of like, hey, Pete, do you want to like, you know, do you want to get pizza? You want to get dinner? We haven't seen each other for 3 months, but let's get dinner. Like, it's that his whole, you know, work-life balance being completely out of whack aligns very much with mine. I feel like we could vibe over that. Be like, God, I have this event coming up and they want the contract money. It's like, tell me about it. Oscorp's developing some new bioweapon and I haven't, like.
Oh, that was great. That was a great answer. I think that's perfect.
Totally.
Okay, we're gonna switch over to our viewer questions. There's still time to put those in. If you have any questions for Natalie, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. While we start there, let's see. We've got from Doot Polka Doot. That fucked me up a little bit. As a keeper, what is it like to give your players a story and see how it goes, especially when there's a plot point you want to hit and they may be steering away from that? Or if that idea plot point feels like it doesn't fit the collective story?
What is it like to give your players a story and see how it goes, especially when there's a plot point you want to hit and they may be steering away from that? Okay. You can't force anything. That being said, you can get very good at putting things in your player's path, which is really more how I think about it, or presenting your players with the only logical choice, right? And this sometimes like gets into a space where it's hard for me to answer because the games I'm running specifically to create content out of, and my cast knows that, and we've been at this long enough that, like, you know, if we need to, right, above the table, I will sometimes just be like, guys, we got to get off this tangent, right? Because it'll happen still sometimes, you know, you just be gaming and it's like, oh, suddenly, rather than role playing or like performing, the characters are just like having a conversation. And to an extent, sometimes we leave some of that in. It's very much on brand for us, but sometimes it's just like so eating up so much of our session time that I'm like, all right, we can't have you guys discussing like what you're gonna order at the bodega anymore. We have to move on. Like, or you know, like, oh, are you planning to meet up together in character? Your characters are together now. Why don't you just have them talk about the thing they want to talk about? But yeah, so like, it's sometimes hard for me to answer the question of like, how do you railroad without railroading? It's like it's different. You're not, and there's a different mindset that goes into telling and running a narrative game versus running a what people like to call home game, but what I like think of in my head is, you don't mean home game, you mean unstructured game, where literally the fun of that type of game is the finding out and the, oh, characters could do anything wild, right? And I think also there's different types of people. Like, I play in very few games, and the ones I do play in are often at least a stream, because I prefer a game that has narrative stakes and a direction and a thing to lean into, right? Rather than just, oh yeah, let's just meet and randomly do whatever. Because I think narratively, I am a storyteller, and I think, so like, what do I do if they don't go to a plot point? I let them dither around until I find a chance to say, hey, by the way, here's a plot point, and I will slip it back in. Or I will give them the chance. I will let them go off and explore a thing. And then when they're done with that, it's like, okay, well, you went off and did that. Plot happened. Oops, you missed it. You know, or whatever. You know, you're in control of the world as the GM. And so you get to like determine if you need to postpone a thing you want to have happen, or if you need to say, okay, that thing happened and they missed it. What does that mean? Yeah. And then you go from there and you prepare something new and different in response to that. So yeah, it's complicated. I have complicated feelings about that specific question that I could probably do an entire other interview about.
Okay, this is from Migo1224.
Hi, Migo.
How do you develop NPCs to have good character impact? Like the food truck NPCs in season 2 had a fun personality and impact, but were there for a few episodes.
Ooh, pull from life. If you need an NPC that you want to be fun and have like, you know, a memorable moment, but you know they're not going to be around for very long, find a thing that you're going to get inspired by, or just like a thing you like from your life, right? What they're referencing specifically is our beach episode, where the heroes, we literally do a whole beach episode, and there's a food truck there, and I decided like, oh, I've been watching a lot of like Bon Appetit videos, so I'm gonna make one of the food truck people is just gonna be Brad from Bon Appetit. I'll do my best impression of him and his accent. And then like the other worker was just based on someone I used to work with in a restaurant. Just this nice lady who liked, you know, food prep and stuff. That's my secret is if I need an NPC and I need them to feel real, I just base them on someone I know or some, you know, person I know of, and then do a gentle homage, if sometimes a bit of a, you know, caricature impression.
All right. If we've got no
more... and then tie them to someone in the story. Like perfect example there. They were tied to one of the players. That's the other way you do it. Is you say, all right, now I have what they're going to be like, And how to make them important? Just tie them to one of your players. Make a player connection happen.
Okay. That is going to bring us to the end of our interview, Natalie. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me today. This has been an amazing conversation. I love learning all about you. So go ahead and plug everything you're working on. Where can people find you next? What are you up to?
All right. Adventurers, listen up. We are releasing our Expanded Universe series. We do this once a year, once every couple of years, where we bring in guests from other shows. In this case, it's 16 guests from across TTRPG space. And we will be playing in groups of 4 for 4 standalone one-shots. An episode is coming out every Friday in March. We are sponsored by the lovely folks at Many Worlds Tavern and Bookworm Games. We will have codes you can use at checkout through them. They're helping us tell stories and do this thing we want with friends of ours from the industry. So please come and support it and check it out. It's a great thing that if you've never listened to our show before and you want to just sample what like our show is like and what episodes sound like I say, they're all standalone. They're their own little thing. But they do connect to our larger world, so you get a taste of what our world building and our modern lo-fi cryptid-filled fantasy version of the world is like. So yeah, that's dropping March 7th with the first episode, and then every Friday after that, 14th, 28th, or 21st, 28th. I think that's weeks. And yeah, you can find updates about that on our socials at Story Squad Cast. Again, literally any social, you look us up, we'll be there. Joe just shared the link tree for it, so you can pick whichever one you're still choosing to have on your phone. And if you can't wait until March and you want to try and binge all of our content before then, we have several onboarding points in the series. We have recaps of the first 2 seasons. If you want to just get caught up very quickly and then only have to get caught up on like season 3's episodes. It's all the same all the same story, but different, arcs and chapters within that story have been designated as such. And if you're completionist, episode 1, good luck. See you in 90 episodes probably. Storyteller Squad, TheStorytellerSquad.com. You can find some of our artwork and pictures and updates about what events we'll be at. I will be at Emerald City Comic Con, C2E2 in Chicago, and PAX East in the first half of this year. Please come by our booth and you can pick up any of the merch that I showed off on the stream, and other cryptid and fantasy lo-fi themed accessories and stuff. And we would love to meet you. So come say hi.
And apparently you're on Pixel Fed now.
Apparently. Thank you, Mel. Mel is our social media manager, and is obsessed with this new site. So if you're moving to Pixel Fed, check us out. I am so lucky to have Mel because I, like I say, cannot stand social media.
Oh my gosh. Mel is great. We've interviewed Mel before on this show, so you can go check that interview out.
That's right. You hear one of my amazing cast members talk about their origins in nerdy space.
Hopefully I'll get them all one day. Collect them.
The full set.
Let's see. As far as New Age Geeks is concerned, we've got Forging Fates on Monday, I think. And on Thursday, I'm interviewing Diana the Rose. Besides that, I think that is all we've got going on next week. If you've got nothing else, I've got nothing else.
Yeah, come see Diana's interview. Diana's great.
Remember, we love you, geeks. Good night.
Take care, adventurers.